Hi, this is Lou Pulsfer to talk about the dangers of leader bashing in multiplayer card games. So what's leader bashing? Leader bashing occurs when most of the players in the game focus on attacking the leader. This is, of course, games with more than two players. In a two-player game or a solo game, of course you bash the other player. It's not a problem. Trying to pull the leader back is natural, but when everyone can do it anytime, it becomes a problem. At worst, no one wants to be the leader, so sandbagging results. This problem easily arises in around-the-table card games. It's less likely in board games because there are spatial relationships in board games via the board that limit who you can attack in practical terms. Is this bad? Yes. It's not very interesting if a game is dominated by leader bashing in the sense that play doesn't vary much. It rarely requires horns of a dilemma decisions. You just attack the leader. How simple. In general, it makes for a dull game. I think that games that suffer from rampant leader bashing are usually uninteresting, at least to me, but may be good for those who don't want to have to think. They just bash the leader. Munchkin is a big example of this. It's a very popular game, but not because of the gameplay. It's because of the extended joke. In Munchkin, everyone can gang up on whoever is trying to level up. So when you have people playing who are good players, who want to win, then most everyone gets to about 9th level or nearly there before someone wins, because the players gang up on anyone near the goal level, which is 10th. So the game takes far longer than the quality of the activity warrants. Yet it prospers despite the leader bashing rather than because of it. I can't tell you why people like it. It seems to be the extended joke, but I got the joke from reading the cards, and I know other people who say that, so why play the game? Because the gameplay itself is not very good. Even in a board game you can have leader bashing. Vinci, which people often pronounce Vinci, is another leader bashing game. It's a board game, but anyone can pull out of where they are on the map and go back in anywhere, going after anyone else. This is nonsense from a military point of view, but Vinci is a very abstract board game. Vinci's descendant Small World may also suffer from this, but it's short enough to perhaps avoid some of the effects of leader bashing. How about an example from a prototype design? I watched part of a card game prototype being played in 2015. The objective was to inflict hits on other players while avoiding them yourself. But anyone could attack anyone else except when they were limited by the categories of attack. You had to have the right category to attack somebody. After the game, I asked the players if there had been a tendency to gang up on leader. Yes, they said. And I had anticipated, even though I didn't watch much of the game, that it would be classic leader bashing, and it was. Now that's going to be a fairly dull game. It's going to be one of those games where people play 1 to 3 times and then they're done with it. How can a designer avoid leader bashing? Well, Euro-style games avoid it by providing virtually no way for you to directly attack another player. It's mostly, in American football terms, blocking rather than tackling. You get in the way of the other players, you don't actually do something to them. Now, you can try to do the same in card games, but I ask myself, is that typical of card games? I don't think so. That's not the way card games typically work. Oh, except solitaire, but solitaire in card games is a one-player thing, not a multiplayer solitaire. Another thing you can do is you can introduce spatial relationships even though you don't have an actual board. Now, when you have spatial relationships that can be unchanging, such as how far somebody is from you around the table, or they can be ones that change as the players acquire new capabilities. Bang, which is a very popular game that's played with cards, is the first game I noticed that does this. In Bang, you can only fire at someone within range of your weapon, and the ultimate purpose of the game is to shoot people often enough that they have no hit points left and they die and they're out of the game. Initially, your weapon lets you shoot only the players to either side of you around the table, but you can get a weapon that fires farther around the table. Another prototype example, this is one of my games, a Kill the Aliens game, where every player represents xenophobes. They hate the other aliens. You can only target adjacent players, essentially. There's more detail than that, but that's practically what it is. Players can also withdraw some of their systems so that they're harder to attack, because the attacker has less strength. There are certain alien artifacts, however, that allow one-time attacks anywhere on the board, and there are researched technologies that allow attacks at greater length. So the cards and the positions around the table provide the spatial relationships of a board. How does Risk avoid leader bashing? Well, I'm talking about the American pre-2008 edition. In that game, it's more important to wipe out small nations, take their cards, get more armies for the cards, and continue to wipe out small nations, rather than to seriously harm a large nation. When you seriously harm but don't wipe out a large nation, you reduce their armies, but you also reduce yours without any immediate gain. So there are reasons why players in Risk don't necessarily attack the leader. And of course the other reason is that you may not be in a position on the board where you can attack the leader. Spatial relationships again. Now I'm going to quote somewhat extensively from my book, Game Design. What are the dynamics of being ahead or behind in the game? Multi-sided games only. Leader bashing might be defined as a tendency of players to gang up on and drag down the leader. If this is too easy, the game becomes an attempt to avoid looking like the leader. If it is too hard, the game becomes multiplayer solitaire. Some games address this question by making it unclear who the leader is. Unquote. This could be generalized in a different way as, how easy is it to hinder another player, and how much can you help yourself and hinder the leader at the same time? The easier it is to hinder another player, the easier it is to help yourself and hinder the leader, the more likely you are to attack the leader. Game design involves lots of fine lines. You go too much one way, too much the other way, it's not as satisfactory. You try to find a sweet spot. Interactivity requires ways to affect other players, but if it's too easy, leader bashing results, and that can lead to a dull game. Thanks for listening.